So, as I was telling them, today in this session, we're going to learn a lot about the importance of mentorship, sonship, and being molded in what God has chosen you to be and do. So, I lost my binder, so I got to pull up these questions. But what I want to do is, I just want to go down the line. I want you to formally introduce yourself and tell everybody what you do. And then we'll come back, and I have a question for each one, which will deal with a different layer of mentorship and sonship. So also, like I said before, if you have some questions, send it to @CultivateKCC. And don't be asking no weird questions about me and my daddy. We're not going that deep. I'm just playing. You can ask anything you want to ask. We are open book, but we have questions about mentorship that we're going to go through. So go ahead and introduce yourself, and we'll get started.
Charles Wolford the second, his pops. First and foremost, publicly, I always want to let him know how much I'm proud of him. Son, I want you to know.
Had to shake that off. Thuggin', okay.
I'm praying for you, Pastor Goines. I don't know what you do with this dude, man. But publicly, I want you to know how proud I am of you and love you so much. Who I am Charles's father, and I love being a dad to him and a father, but I pastor a church called Cross Point, and also I serve in another capacity, CEO of another organization called Promise House. It's such a joy to be here, and Goines is my boy, he's my homeboy, he's my frat brother, so thank you again for also loving my son and taking him in.
I am Chris Wesley. I'm an associate pastor at Antioch Fellowship Church in Dallas. Okay. In the building. Hey,
Antioch,
we here.
in here. What's up?
We in here. My father is the senior pastor of the Antioch Church. I just went on staff there in October after years away, doing ministry elsewhere, and so it's time for me to go home, and so I'm sure we'll get into that a little bit. So I'm the associate pastor at the Antioch Fellowship Church in Dallas.
Hey.
Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Ronnie. Hey. Outside it's kind of sunny. Whatever you do, don't do it for the money. Okay.
Whoa!
Yeah. Yes. I am Ronnie Goines. I'm the lead pastor here at Koinonia Christian Church, the Koinonia Christian Church. Awesome. I got two of my daughters are here. I saw a fourth one. Where my people? Where my kids? I saw 2, 3, 4. Awesome. So anyway, I'm excited to be here. I don't want to waste too much time on the intro. I want to get into the discussion, but it's been blessed in my life to hear to hear from you guys, that you guys have been pulling and learning and gleaning from this this conference. Again, I'm like Pastor Wolford. I love and I'm so proud of that young man right there. I'm so proud of that cat. He's doing his thing. Okay, my boy.
My name is Christian Brown.
Hey!
I've had the opportunity to serve under pastor in the youth ministry here, and as Charles said, I'm starting a Bible study in Tyler. Anybody from East Texas? Anybody? Hey, okay, that's me.
You got 4 people. It's cool though. So this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna dive straight into it. I'm gonna go back and forth between my questions and yours, but I'm gonna start with Pastor Chris Wesley, because we relate on many different levels. One being that we are both PKs. So, do I have any PKs in the house? If you don't know what a PK is, it's a pastor's kid, where you were born. The hospital was at the church. You was born. They handed you a hymnal and a tambourine. So they was playing with Legos. We was playing with So PKs are interesting individuals who've been chosen because a lot of us don't feel like we got to choose church. Everybody's like, I was lost and deep in sin. And then I wasn't lost. I was in church, and now here I am. So what happens is a lot of PKs, they leave church and come back. So there's a different level of struggle that comes with being the son of someone who is chosen in ministry. And then you have to figure out, if God is calling me, am I borrowing a calling from my father or mother, Or is this a genuine calling? There's a lot that goes into that. But I wanted to specifically have Pastor Chris kind of walk us through this, because he is currently working through the process of potentially succeeding his father here at his church. His father has amazing dynamic ministry, and like he said, he was doing ministry outside of the church, but now he's coming back and it's full swing. He's getting acclimated to everything that comes with being the type of pastor. So here's my question. What are the challenges and the advantages of being the son of a man who is chosen by God in ministry? Because a lot of times we focus on one side, but let's talk about both sides of that.
So for me, I'm blessed because, and I tell my inner circle this: my dad is not my pastor; he's my dad. Like I have spiritual leadership outside of him. He's just my dad. He's all encompassing for me. My dad was the type that never missed a football game, never missed a basketball game. He chose when me and my brothers were younger to not go out of town for more than 3 days at a time. He literally wanted to ensure that we didn't confuse pastor and dad. Right? He was very, very intentional about that. And so I have a different experience than most, because my dad, I'll give you a prime example. My youngest brother played college basketball on scholarship. He played AAU during the summer. My dad would skip Sunday morning services to go to AAU tournaments. My dad would always tell us, I put God first, I put my family second, and the church comes last, in that order, and they need to know that. And so for me, I have a different balance, right? In the sense that my dad wanted us to know he was dad first. And so because of that, even in my own calling and how I wrestled with that and how I came to understand that, he allowed me space to do it. I've been in preaching ministry for 15 years. My dad has never looked over any sermon notes. He just let me kind of evolve and develop in ways. And so on the one hand, I'll say there are certain challenges that I didn't get to experience because he wouldn't let me. Right? I never felt like I was fighting the church for my dad's attention. You know what I'm saying? And so because of that, I have a healthy relationship with the church in the sense that I don't have resentment to the church for taking my dad from me.
Come on.
It never happened. And so I understand how people do wrestle with that. The older I got, the more I kind of realized how much he sacrificed, because now I'm in ministry. Right now I'm walking beside him and having opportunities to do the things that he chose not to do, because at my age he was a father. He chose not to do a lot of the stuff he allows me to do so that he could be with me. Ultimately, I've gotten to see even more the sacrificial love of a father, which helps me even in my own theology, right? Like, my dad helps me understand God well. And so the challenges, I didn't see them as much, but I will say, I went to seminary before I graduated high school. My dad is a walking Bible, and that's a plus, right? He helped me in the way I view God. He helped me in the way I view priorities. And so I think those are the pluses for me. So my story is a little different than a lot of people who share similar experiences, and I'm grateful for that.
Wow. So what's beautiful about that is not the average story.
Right.
When it comes. You don't even got to be a father in ministry. Just fathers as a whole. That is not the usual story. And I'm going to show that because before I move on to any of these questions, I know that outside of Chris, the other three panelists, they have different stories totally when it comes to their relationship with their fathers and men who were supposed to be mentors in their life. So I want to start with Pastor Goines, because before we started, we saw that you have taken on the role of being pastor, father, or mentor to a lot of people. I want you to go in on how you were able to become that for everybody else in spite of what you may not have had growing up.
Well, if you're asking like how do I step into that role, it's kind of one of those things. It just is, and it's not a force type thing. It just kind of, there's certain individuals that I have a certain affinity or connection with, that it evolves into that. But I think as a pastor, by default, you are a father figure for all. I mean, I think that's part of the pastoral mantle, is that you got to have some father there's some in you that everyone sees as a father. But then certain things grow from that. That's a lot more intimate. Like Jesus, he had the masses, he had the 12, and he had the 3. And so there's different types of thing of affinity. I don't know, man, I just got this weird thing with me that even though my dad didn't raise me in the house, I've always had a good relationship with him from afar. I just didn't know what it looked like to be a man up close from that capacity, but I knew, like my dad, he called me on the phone and tell me to read. He'll dare me. I bet you can't read XYZ from the Bible. I said, yes, I can. He said, go with your Bible. And so I'm reading this as a dare to my dad, but he's really making sure I'm reading my Bible. And it's like when I'm kind of wired, like for instance, when Chris was talking, I kind of see when God shares or shows me something, it's not really my option, even though I'm not your father. When he put that mantle on or show me something to you as a son, it's my job to convey that to you as a son. And it's up to you to receive it, but I got to give it. For instance, I'll share this with you. For you specifically, when you was talking, man, one of the things that the Lord spoke to my heart while you was talking is to make sure you know that it's okay to be a youth in public, so you won't be elevated and have to be a youth in private. Because if you're not careful, you've had to be something in public for so long that if you're not careful, when you're elevated, you have to be everything you couldn't be in public and private. And it's harder to work that stuff out in private if you couldn't do it where people can see and point it out. Now you're doing it in places where people can't see, and that's when it becomes toxic. So you be very mindful of that. So that's kind of the kind of dad thing, and I'm kind of I just wish some people had told me some stuff, would have loved me enough to tell me some stuff. And so, and I don't know if I answered your question or not, but it's, yeah.
So I'm gonna bring it back to my dad, because I believe his story is like the polar opposite of Chris Wesley's, where his father was in ministry as well. So we come from a line of ministers, but he will tell you that his experiences early on with his father were not like that, where he prioritized this and he showed me this and I have all these gleaming ministries. My dad would let you know that God had to work on his heart to go back and simply honor his father in the midst of what he didn't do. So my question for you, Dad, how do you help someone in the crowd where they hear Chris's story and they're like, oh, that's great, but that's not mine. If God is calling me to be mentored or eventually be a mentor, how can I do that if I don't have an example? Or the example I had was not a good example?
A couple of pieces is what God revealed to me is we all in our own spaces and places of life have brokenness, and not having my father as a mentor and as a role model, I began to hear God have a conversation with me because I thought I knew him because he was in and out of our lives. By the time I got to 5th grade, I'd gone to like 12 or 13 schools because we'd come home and have to move, or my mother was fleeing from domestic violence from him. And so I thought I knew him. And God walked me through an exercise and began to say to me, what's your dad's favorite color? Tell me about what it was like for your father to grow up in a household with 16 other kids. What was your father's relationship like with his dad? And I did not have the answers to that. Because he carried the role and the title, so to speak, as father and dad, I began to assign that somehow that made him a perfect man, and that he should have made all the right decisions and choices in his life so that that would be transferred to me. But he didn't have that. But what I did not know is I did not know his story. And so what that called me to do is to figure out who this guy was and understand his journey as to why he was broken, because what I realized is that he didn't have mentors either. He didn't know what it's like to be a man and to be a father and to have someone to come alongside him. So there had to be grace extended in that space, just so that I could, it doesn't excuse it. It does not excuse it. It gives me some understanding so that then I can be in space with him to understand this monster of a guy that I saw. And my father is 5'5". Not to cast a negative aspersion on anybody in the room who's 5'5". But you know, I'm 6'2", 6'3", depending upon who you ask, what day of the week it is. I didn't realize how short my father was until I was a grown man. Wow. Because he was such a monster to me.
Wow.
He was such a monster, and I saw all the abuse and all the horrible things that he did, and I was bigger than him. And I looked at it, I said, this is a little bitty dude. But in my head, I had a different image because of what I had pictured of him. And so to direct response is, as a mentor to other men and to other young ladies, whoever God calls me to be in space with, is I try to help us understand relationship, get to know each other first. And let me speak to somebody in the room who has an estranged relationship with a parent, your mother, your father, your grandparent, or whoever may have raised you, is as an opportunity, we have to find place and space to give grace so that we can understand their journey. Because we sometimes want the image that a mentor and a dad and a father, that they have to be perfect. Wow. But the greatest thing that we often can give to each other is, in our brokenness, realize that there may be brokenness there as well. And the best father that I could be to Charles is for him, in my transparency, is talk to him about my brokenness and ask him for forgiveness, because our father-son relationship has just as much to do with him accepting my brokenness and all the mistakes that I have made, because he has to be a willing son to say, Daddy, I forgive you for this, for that, for that. And it speaks a lot to my son of the character that he has. And he allows me to build a bridge and be in space with him. He allows me to be at a conference with him. And so we have to have this reciprocity. So it's a dual opportunity as a mentor-mentee. Last thought is that sometimes we want people to mentor us, and we show up and we're not prepared to be mentored. In your preparation to be mentored, you know, this guy doesn't have osmosis, or this woman doesn't have osmosis. You got to be ready to say, this is what I need from you. And then you have to be willing to show up to be mentored. It's not that person who's mentoring you just going to show up and all of a sudden wave a magic wand. Y'all got to be in space together. So I think that's what's important to share.
Okay, y'all can get my data in. That was easy. That was amazing. So I want to let the other panelists know that when I'm doing these, if you guys have a response or something to add, you can add to it. You don't have to wait on me to throw you a question. But that was a perfect alley-oop to the question that I have for Christian. So Christian, I want you to speak to those where they know that there's a desire for mentorship in their lives. Okay, I heard that. I know I need a father figure. And for ladies, there's also women who they need to be mentored by. But I want you to speak to, because this is something that you dealt with in your own spiritual journey, is what happens when I'm trying to embrace mentorship, but I have unrealistic expectations. I'm expecting something from my mentor. He's like, I was about to answer it, then you okay. Unrealistic expectations. Go ahead, sir.
For me, it was kind of weird because I felt God called me to ministry when I was like 17 years old. So my dad was not in ministry. My mom literally was the backbone of our whole family for her faith. So for a young man, I'm like, okay, well, God, you called me to ministry. Well, for a good period of time, I didn't have any mentorship. And I was kind of just figuring it out on my own. And it was hard because God was calling me to leadership and leading other people. friends, high school classmates, while I kind of lacked that mentorship. So before I came to Koinonia, you start to kind of have an image of what you think that mentorship should look like. And it's good because like Chris's example, you see, okay, well, I've seen so many people that didn't grow up that way, and then they decide, hey, I want to walk into mentorship, and somebody just kind of snatches them up and takes them and builds them up. So I grew very frustrated because I had men in my life that didn't do that for me. So they were called, they were pastors, they had this gifting, and I'm waiting for them to snatch me up and take me under their wing, and it never happened. So then when I came here, Pastor blew me away with just what he was doing at Koinonia. And so it was, okay, I'm ready for mentorship. Let's go. Let's get it. And honestly, for a long time, I felt not accepted by Pastor. I felt like because I saw it this way, it should look like this. So thus, if it didn't look like that, I was the problem. And I actually talked about it a few Sundays ago, but I remember I sent a text message to Pastor one day and was just very vulnerable with him and said, hey, I feel this way. And it's funny because he texted me something that kind of blew my mind. I put the phone down, just kind of looked, and he said, Christian, I realized that I may be ready to be a father figure in somebody's life, but I've also realized that that person has to be ready. And so when he said that, I'm like, so you're telling me that it doesn't have to look like what I think it should look like, but it can still be effective. And so for me, it took me being vulnerable to that space that I was unfamiliar with, and that's when the real mentorship started happening. It's kind of like you have to give that father figure mentor permission, right, in order to really mentor you.
Did you recognize that you were angry and wanting me to mentor you, though you was mad at what I represented?
Explain that for me a little
bit. Because you desire, he desired to be mentored and discipled, but he had an anger in him towards the image of what I represented. Like he wanted it, but if it did not be exactly what he thought, he got angry because he was already angry. And sometimes what happens is we walk around because we're so angry that someone did not step in that role and disappoint. We're angry. And so now when someone steps to the role, if they step out of line a little bit, I knew that was just some. And see, he was angry and didn't know. Here's the deal with Christian, though. I loved him past his anger. His anger did not intimidate me. None of that intimidated me because at the end of the day, I'm going to love you out the door, and I love you when you come back in. But what I'm not going to do is not tell you right and challenge you to be better. And I think if you're going to be a mentor, you can't be afraid of your mentee's emotions. You can't mentor nothing that you fear. And so for me, and I understood that I believe that God brought us together. And so if I do my part in honesty and love, if he's away from here, then God knows that part too. Do you remember the conversation we had over here, though, in the green room with you and your wife? You forgot about that one, didn't you? But he came around. It was a lot of frustration, and I know in his mind, he's cussed me out in his mind. I know I saw it, yeah, he's cussing right now, boy. But it was cool because Jesus. I believed him then, I believe in Christian now, and so I think that was just curious that you recognized the anger that you was carrying around all that time.
I didn't recognize it until after the fact, but even deeper than that, I recognized I was actually hurt, and the hurt it preceded the anger. So I was just acting in the anger, and it was clouding my judgment. And so once that text message happened, I was okay, well, let me address the hurt. And then when the hurt happened, I was like, well, Pastor didn't have anything to do with this hurt. So why am I holding him accountable for something that he had nothing to do with?
Come on.
And it's kind of like, you have a Band-Aid on something for a long time. Eventually, you got to take the Band-Aid off. It has to dry, and your body has to allow it to do what it does. And it took conversations with Pastor saying, hey, this is the real me. And I challenge anybody here is that if you think you're going to be mentored and you're going to try to give somebody half of you, it's never going to work. Wow. So the moment I really just was like, hey, I think we have a pretty raw relationship. He tells me, you know, what I need to change, and I can be very honest with him. That's when it really was effective for me personally. But I had to be real and vulnerable and honest with him.
Can I say something else? So our host down here, the question asker, it was intriguing. Look at his daddy when I say this. What was interesting is in Charles, who he thought was his mentor was not his mentor. He had in his mind of what a mentor, well, he had a mentor like a certain stature. This is what a mentor is. But he had a mentor he had no real relationship with. And therefore, his mentor could never fail because he was never connected with him to fail. And many times we have these mentors that we don't even know. And we assign them as being our mentor and know nothing about them. And so as we develop, and so I remember one day at a staff meeting, I don't know what we was talking about, but in the midst of it, God showed me, I said, okay, I said, you know what, guys? That's okay. I cannot mentor him yet because I'm not his pastor yet. He's a member here, but I'm not his pastor yet. And once I became his pastor, then he let me mentor him. And so relationship, don't see a church, and a lot of us, and a lot of us can speak to this, that we adopt figures that we respect and say, that's my mentor.
That's it. That's it.
It's cool to have the person you respect, but your mentor is someone that walks with you. And you know what I'm saying? That's a mentor. And some people, they want sycophants. A sycophant is someone just following, okay, I'm off kilter, but a mentor is a giver to you. If in order for me to mentor me, if in order for me to mentor you, you got to hold my door open for me and bring me water and no, that's a servant.
Yes, sir.
A mentor is someone who wants to bring you water, who wants to serve you, and it's a reciprocal relationship. A mentor will wash your feet and feel honored to do it.
And let me jump in real quick. I think part of the tension, especially with our generation and the idea of mentorship, is that we want people to develop our skills or lend us a platform, but not deal with who we are.
Come on.
So so we look at people who got the skill set we want, or the gifting that we want, or the platform that we want, or the platform that we want, but we don't want somebody to get in our business and say, you're angry. And before I deal, so you want my mantle, but you don't want to deal with the stuff in you that you don't like, right? And so I think that's why before Elisha got Elijah's mantle, he just walked with him. And if you study the dynamic between Elijah and Elisha would go at Elisha. Like, he told him stuff about him that he probably didn't want to hear about himself. So before you get my mantle, I got to deal with some stuff in you. We want skill sets and platforms, and we don't necessarily want somebody to deal with the stuff in us that needs to be dealt with first.
Well said.
Okay.
Charles, that's a good question.
Somebody asked a question from out there?
Yeah, I mean, but listen, he's saying that we want I've never heard, he said that what we want someone to mentor is, help me do what you do good. I want to do it like you. Teach me how to do what you do. But that's, our mentor deals with me.
Right. Because if God wanted you to have their skill set, he would have gave it to you. But the most freeing thing in the world for me was realizing that God called me to be me with all that it looked like, right? And he can use me better being me than he can me being a cheaper imitation of somebody else.
Chris!
So the issue a lot of us have with mentorship is we literally cheapen our anointing. Because we think mentorship means I have to, in some way, become like you. And in doing that, I'm losing everything about me. That ain't mentorship.
Hey, can I? Wow. That's a good point, because what I realized as I started to walk and I got to that place is that when I allow myself to deal with my stuff, this is crazy. Then I started to realize all the stuff that pastor had to deal with as a pastor.
Chris.
So
That's good.
So what I'm saying is Chris, you're saying it because that was me. I mean, and again, I said it. I walked in and I had this, this is the calling. This is what God, led me to. Then I saw a man doing what I was doing. So, okay, well, he needs to help me do what I do. And then when he didn't, I'm mad. And then whenever I addressed it, then I said, I don't think I want that anymore. And so, because again, we drew into that relationship, and he showed me, hey, this is how I'm mentoring you. I'm showing you exactly how Jesus did. Jesus didn't just stand up and preach sermons. He did life with them. And as things came up, he addressed them how they should handle it. You don't get to that point if you're mad, angry, frustrated, and you're not going to deal with your stuff, if that makes sense. So
that's because you'll never be a better pastor than you are a person.
Chris.
So, and that's the thing, like, you will never be able to outserve your life. Does that make sense? And so it's like you ain't gonna be able to you think you'll be able to, and this is the other thing, you might be able to preach great, but you ain't gonna be a good leader if you're not a good person. And so mentorship deals with who you are, not what you do. Because you'll never be able to outserve your life. Now y'all better leave me alone, because y'all better leave me alone.
Tion.
Go.
So,
Listen, don't y'all do that to me.
I was trying to get to these questions, and then a fire broke out over
Listen,
here.
come on.
So, one thing that Christian preached about a few weeks ago that I think goes in alignment with what you guys are saying is God puts people in your life not to give you a platform, but if you believe that you have been called to something, but you don't have an elder or a more wise person in your life to affirm that and come in agreement with you, you might be going after what you want to do and not what God has called you to do. A lot of us, like he said, we look on Instagram, ooh, Mike Todd, he lit. I want to preach like that. Ooh, Charles, nobody's ever done that.
Chuck.
But you look at other people and you see something, a calling that you want. And don't let you be gifted in stuff that kind of looks similar to that. For you, that's confirmation. Oh, I've done that before. I'm good at that. So that must be God confirming that I'm called to that. That is not true, because all throughout the Bible, God calls people to do stuff that they weren't even gifted in doing. I want you to go say this to him. Oh, I got a stuttering problem though, right? I want you to go back and reconcile these people. I used to kill those people, right?
Right.
So if you don't have elders and mentors in your life to confirm based off what they know about you as a person.
Right.
Like he said, oh, you can preach, but this pastorship stuff, you're not called to that, because you're not a people person. You just like the people applause.
And Chuck, listen. The importance of a mentor is that I think we want to be able, in the vein of what you're saying with Moses, we want to be able to stand in front of Red Seas and raise staff and arms and watch the Red Sea depart. We all want to get there, but your mentor will let you know, well, you're not ready for Red Seas because you're frustrated at red lights. Christian, Chuck, listen, and that's what the mentor's response say. You may be going, you may have a Red Sea anointing, but until you deal with these red lights in front of you, you're not ready for the Red Sea. And a lot of people would want, and I've been talking about this thing about we wanting the stage, we want all this stuff, we want to do it. Yes, I want that to be my mentor because I want to do it just like him or just like her. Are you sure you want to do it just like, because that's saying that you want to go through what I went through. You're saying that you want to be homeless like me. That means you want to live, you want to experience the void of what you desire, because I live with the void of what you want. That means you want the hurt out. You want to be fired from jobs, and you want some death. You want to lose some stuff. You want to see your mama get beat up like that. That means, are you sure? Are you sure you want to do it? You sure you want the mantle just like I got it? Or do you want God to cultivate it in you on a level that you can handle it? Because and that is the thing about mentorship. Our job is this: if you got to go through the same thing I went through, I failed as a mentor. The job of the mentor is God is saying, listen, you can't handle what he went through or she went through. So I'm going to send them to you to tell you the story, to let you know how this thing ends, so you won't die in that wilderness. They walked, the whole thing with yea, though I walk through the valley of shadow of death is this: I walk through it and I know where the potholes are. So now I'm able to walk back in there and walk you through it and say, watch your step. That's a mentor.
Now, you said something interesting that I feel like I need to speak to from the other side of the coin. And that is the affirmation of the elders. This is a reality that we don't often speak to, but I feel like I'm in the right room. So I talk very candidly about the example of my father. But Pastor, when you were talking about understanding your father's words, like having grace for it, that's where me and my dad's relationship is. So my daddy don't talk. So people would assume that every time I preach, he's saying, man, you did a great job. When your dad told you he was proud of you, my dad don't say that. Wow. It's how he was raised. It's the macho-ness of his era, right? So I can count on one hand how many times in ministry my father's told me he was proud of me. We good. I know he loved me. We straight. But the reason we're good now is because I came to understand that affirmation doesn't always look like what we think it should. So for you to say, you need an elder to often affirm your gift. We see that in the scripture, right? Like Paul's talking about Timothy, like, thank you, Holy Spirit. So Paul's telling Timothy, stir up the gift. And we affirmed it when we laid hands on you. You know who wasn't there to lay hands on Timothy was his own dad.
Chris.
So I think sometimes we're looking for the affirmation of particular people to validate our gift. And then we feel like, well, if they don't validate it, that must mean I'm not gifted. Or if they didn't tell me I can, that must mean I can't. But the reality is, number one, if you got a relationship with the Lord and the Lord told you, listen, I respect my elders, but I don't need none of them to tell me what I'm gifted to do. And I know that sounds real millennial and arrogant. I ain't trying to go there. But what I'm saying is, I don't need you to affirm me. I'm good. Thank you, identity panel. Like, I'm good. And so I don't even feel the need to, because this is what happens. Then we feel the need to dress it up in a way that might make them affirm it. That's why we got so much hater theology, right? So we get to the point where we feel like in order for them to affirm me, I got to dress my gift up in a way that they'll stamp it. Please. So I said that, so I really want to speak to somebody who feels like, well, I don't have any elder to affirm me, right? And because everybody got different stories, right? And you might not have somebody that's looked at you and said, I believe in you, I believe in your gift, I believe that God has put something special on the inside of you. Then nobody lay hands on you at the altar. That's all right. Trust Jesus and the work of the Holy Spirit in you, sometimes discipleship doesn't happen in the context of mentorship the way like you think it's supposed to look. Sometimes you just need to be active in your local assembly. Even if the pastor never tells you, you got a call on your life. I'm at Bible study, I'm faithful. I'm growing, I know my word. I know what the word says. I'm trying to serve in any capacity that I can serve in. And when I found my niche to serve, I don't need you to tell me I'm good at it, because I'm discipled and developed and I'm walking it out. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and Chris, and to this now, I want to be clear of what he's not saying. There's a difference between affirmation and confirmation.
Yes.
You are affirmed by God and yourself in what you do.
Absolutely.
But it is biblical doctrine and protocol to be confirmed by those who are already aware and have been where you're trying to go.
Yes, sir.
Jesus Christ himself did not start his public ministry until he was confirmed at the baptism.
It has to be this way.
This is my son in whom I'm well pleased. He was confirmed publicly. And whenever you go, but don't walk about saying, as long as I got King Jesus, I don't need nobody else. That's not what he's saying. Because that means your motive, your fuel may be hate.
Yes.
And now you want to succeed to show them that exactly. So that ain't what he's saying. Wow. Affirmations come from here. Yes. But if you say you called a cook, but ain't nobody confirm your culinary skills. You understand what I'm saying? So affirmation and confirmation are two different things. So that's one of the things that you do get from mentorship, discipleship, because I think inside of us, if we just be honest, it may not sound very holy and that type thing, but we all desire to be confirmed by those we respect and love.
Sure.
But just don't let that consume you. And you're stopping what you're doing because you feel the affirmation comes. That's not affirmation. And confirmation, as he inferred, can come from, it can be ubiquitous all over the place, but not from where you think it should come from.
I watched a lot of ministries fail because people couldn't find somebody to confirm them. So they said, I'm going to go do it myself and prove them wrong.
Yeah. That's it. Thank you. That's what I want you to add right there.
So like that's where that hater thing comes in that I mentioned. Like you trying to prove the haters wrong. That's why when I preach a hater sermon, everybody run all up and through here, because you got somebody in your mind that told you couldn't, that you want to prove wrong. And that's not what God has called you to do. You know what I'm saying? And so be affirmed by God, and then God will send you somebody to confirm you. Like that's the Paul Timothy piece. He'll send somebody.
That's what I wanted to add, is that if you just walk in your gifting,
yes, sir,
God brings the affirmation. You can long for it and expect it, but your confirmation, but you don't have to necessarily go out and search for it.
Right.
You function in your gifting, and that's one of the things we talked about as well, is your gift is a form of affirmation as well. Yeah. Your gifting matches your calling. Yeah. You can't have a calling that your gift doesn't match. So then somebody will say, hey, your calling is, I see your calling and I see your gift, and I've talked to God on your behalf. And so now I'm going to affirm you in that. Jesus didn't say, hey, God, where you at? He did what he was called to do, and then God popped out. See, y'all missed that. When you're walking in your gift, God will pop out and affirm you. But sometimes if you're so focused on getting it from somebody, something, or a place, you start to idolize the thing instead of walking in your gift.
Wow. Okay, we got a couple minutes left. I'm sorry for y'all that submitted y'all questions, but this was a common question with what I did read. I think we should end on this. And I would like for my dad to pray for those who this is relevant to. And if you guys have anything to add before he prays, that'd be great. And this is something that I dealt with personally, and I know that a lot of sons or people who have had mentors before, because a lot of times people think you only are called to one mentor, right? And you can have multiple mentors in different stages of your life. You might have a mentor for that stage, and then that season will go up, and you'll have a mentor for the next. So one of the biggest roadblocks for mentorship, for me and for a lot of chosen believers, is disappointment. Disappointment. Now, it can start at the house. where elders and people who were put in your life and they're supposed to function a certain way and mold you and build you up, they didn't do it right. So you were disappointed with those who were put over you in your home life. So now people outside of your family don't have a chance because of what you already experienced when you were younger. So you are still disappointed in your mom and dad that you won't let this spiritual mom and dad that he's placed in your life come in and do what they didn't do in your life. So I want to pray, and first we're going to have some words from you guys. If you have, if the Lord gives you anything, to those who you need to move past disappointment in order to even be able to embrace not only mentorship, but your calling as well.
So we've talked a couple of times, and like the John the Baptist, we just kind of talked about it. Typically, the story we focus on about John the Baptist is him baptizing Jesus. Yeah. We often forget that there is another episode as it relates to Jesus and John the Baptist. The same John the Baptist that when Jesus shows up to be baptized, John is like, I don't deserve, like, you need to baptize me. You know, you're the one. Later on in Matthew, you know, the Bible talks about the fact that John, who is in prison, sends his disciples to ask Jesus, are you the one? Or should we look for another? Wow. So John was like, you the one. I'm not worthy to baptize you. Not too much later, it was, are you the one? What changed? Situation. John is in prison now, so who is he mad at? I'm disappointed in Jesus because I thought me being your forerunner was supposed to look one way, but you out there doing all that, and I'm stuck in here. Check out what Jesus says to John the Baptist. Jesus tells the disciples, y'all, I'm getting happy. Okay. Jesus tells John's disciples, go back and tell him what you see. The blind see, the lame walk. Then he says something crazy. God help me. He said, and you go back and tell him, blessed is he who's not offended by me. Okay. So that word offended in the Greek is the word scandalon. It's essentially a trap. Disappointment can be the biggest trap to your ministry. And typically, disappointment is legitimate, but it's also about your perspective. What you're typically mad at your mentors about ain't about them. It's about why you not where you want to be.
Boy.
Stop it.
So Jesus tells John, you mad because you've taken the trap of offense. So disappointment is really a trap of the enemy. It's a trap of offense. Check out what's so crazy about this, and I'm done. I've been talking too much anyway. What do y'all know what John was in prison doing? You don't know. Okay, God help me. So Herod, who arrested him, actually liked hearing John preach. So every day, Herod would have John come preach. Listen to what I'm telling you. John was preaching the same sermon in the prison that he was in the wilderness. His frustration wasn't his assignment, or his frustration wasn't his gifting. It never changed. The sermon never changed. He was just mad that he didn't have the platform. Sometimes we get mad. Sometimes we get frustrated because it's not that our gifting or changed or that our assignment, it's the platform. John's disappointment wasn't in what was in him, it was where he was getting to do it. And sometimes we're disappointed because we're not getting to do what we want to do, where we want to do, how we want to do. And so John took offense to Jesus. And here's the thing, this is what I need you to know. It is altogether possible to be a disciple and be offended with Jesus at the same time. I wasn't even trying to. It is possible to follow Jesus and be offended with him at the same time, because the apostles were too. This is the point. Jesus is trying to get us to understand. Don't allow the trap of offense or disappointment stop you from doing what I've assigned you to do. I know they hurt you. I know they let you down. I know they're not perfect, but neither are you. Stop projecting perfection on your mentor. That's not the point. The point is, are you going to take faith and make it a false truth? Are you going to take their failures and make that the truth? No. What you really need to understand is that just because they failed doesn't mean it gives you the right to be offended.
Chris.
Are y'all hearing me?
Yeah.
Come on.
I'm through.
We're going to go in prayer.
Hold on, sir. Hold on, sir. No, sir. No, sir. No, you are not. I'm about to run. You hear me?
Yeah.
We need a keyboard. Nobody on keys. Listen. I think there is nothing to be, that perspective, disappointment, projecting that from on our mentor, our disciple, I think that is key. The other step or nuance of disappointment is not on who's discipling me. I'm disappointed in me.
Yes, sir.
I've disappointed me. Yeah. And so what do I do when everybody's doing their part except for me? When I'm disappointed in my own performance. And here it is on that. Here it is. Being an invalid doesn't invalidate you. Mephibosheth was a cripple. But he had full access to the palace. You may not be able on your own to walk straight on your own. You can be an invalid. You don't have the name, you don't have the money, you don't have the credit, you don't have, everything has made you an invalid, but you're still not invalidated. So if the one person you should never be disappointed in is you. A lot of people may but you know your full effort, or you know that I know what I look like, but I'm giving it everything I got. I'm giving it everything I got. Yeah. I can't be disappointed in my effort. I don't know what all my mentors doing, but I know I'd be damned if I ain't giving everything I got. I'm not going to be disappointed in me because I know I ain't gave up on me. I cannot be disappointed in myself. And that's the one person that should never let you down is you. If nobody else believes, if nobody else come here, you preach. If nobody else show up your graduation, if nobody else calls your name, you be like David. David said, sit for the ephod. I'll encourage myself. I'm not going to be disappointed, not in me.
Everybody stand all over the place. Everybody stand.
So you can't do me like that, Pastor.
Come on, because we about to...
Look, this is the last thing I want us to understand about mentorship is, and we didn't even bring it up, is that mentorship provides a covering over you.
Yeah.
That's what y'all missing right now. The mentorship is not just to get the nasty things out of you and to train you up in the skills and the gifting, but it's to cover you because honestly, you don't know what you're doing sometimes. That's right. And I remember that when I was a kid, it was this guy that lived by my grandparents, and he ain't had no teeth, and he was kind of weird, right? And so he would walk down the street, and I would always run back inside. But then when my dad was outside, I didn't have to worry about being scared.
I hear you, Christian.
You see, so in that lifetime, that was my father, and he had that covering over me. But now, watch this. I can get around other pastors, and I'm going to be honest with you, and God's dealing with me, is I'll look at myself and say, man, I'm not good enough. Man, I can't stand in the crowd. Man, I can't do this. But I bet y'all one thing, if I walk in that room with Pastor Goines, my head is up high because I've been affirmed and approved by my pastor. But you know what? We can clap all we want to, but you know what? We had to get dirty sometimes. He had to have some conversations with me. I had to cry. I had to get on my knees. I had to be honest. But then I was able to see that he loved me in the midst of my mess. So I'm not walking in the room my head up because he's pastor. I'm walking in the room that he's walking in with me knowing who I am. Knowing all of my mess, he still decided to walk with me. the relationship started with his platform, but then it changed because of his love for me. Y'all missing this right now. When somebody decides, I'm going to invest in you, your account is in the negative right now. But I'm going to invest in you because I have counseled with God. And I see your calling, and I see your gift. And he said something key. He said, I don't have a choice. When somebody really is meant to mentor you, they have the mentality, I don't have a choice but to do it. So even if you don't want it, I'm going to do it anyway.
Boy, Chris Stian.
I'm done. Sorry, y'all, I just figured I'd follow, so, yeah.
Charles Marcus Wolford III. His grandfather's name is Charles Wolford. My name is Charles Marcus Wolford II. I don't have my daddy's full name because he doesn't have a middle initial, but as a part of transferal, when I started becoming a man, I realized that the legacy that I should have inherited had been tainted.
Preacher.
Because every time I tried to use my name, I got rejected. Because the bad checks that my daddy had wrote was attached to my name. The bad credit in community was attached to my name. The legacy in the community of all the horrible things that he had done was attached to my name. So I had to take back my name. And so legally, I had to do something different. If I wanted to change the trajectory of Charles Marcus Wolford III, I had to fix my name. I had to take our name back. And so part of being his father and making up in my mind that as I mentor him, as I lead, I had to pass on something to him so that as he gets ready to buy his new house, when he signs his name, his name means something. That when he came to Koinonia, his name meant something.
That's right.
So there has to be a starting point for us all where we make up in our mind that mentor or not, that my name is going to mean something. I don't need you to affirm my identity because I can help make a name for myself. Let me help you out with this. His grandfather shot his grandmother in the face, shot his grandmother in the shoulder and in the stomach. His grandfather did that. His grandfather went to prison. And when his grandfather got out of jail, his grandmother, who lived and survived the assault, his grandmother said, I need to go see him. And what she knew is that she wasn't doing it for herself. She was doing it for me, and she was doing it for him. She walked up to him, and she looked my father, his grandfather, in the face.
Come on, Will.
After all the abuse, after all the hurt that she had incurred for his name, she looked to him, Laron, and said, I forgive you. And what my mother, his grandmother, did for a legacy is she released us from a lifetime of hatred and pain and unforgiveness, because in that moment, she had enough in her name and in her power to know that we could not be held hostage to their past and to their mess. So some of us here, we refuse to let people mentor us because we've been hurt by other grown people, other people who have manipulated us, who have hurt us. And so sometimes our starting place is to release and to forgive. I know you're saying that that's easier said than done. But let me encourage you this. It's the greatest passage of scripture that we understand as it relates to forgiveness and release has to be in Luke, the 15th chapter. And we think of it as the prodigal son story. But there's a passage in verse number 21 and 22. Is when that boy came to himself. And he started going back to his daddy's house to ask for forgiveness. This is the only time in text of scripture where we see God running. And this is what I want you to hear. Is that part of forgiveness and release, it always starts with us. And so I want you to hear God speaking to you right now. And on the road to forgiveness of accepting someone mentoring us, leading us, and guiding us is the road to forgiveness and saying to that person, whether it's your daddy, whether it's your mother, whether it is a pastor that has hurt you, whether it is a teacher, it's beginning in this place where you begin to say, okay, I'm coming out of this jail and I do want somebody to mentor me, but I gotta ask for forgiveness of myself and gotta release them so that I'm not in jail anymore. Grab hands with somebody right now.